Constable Royally Beat, sir. Nothing to report on the street, sir. And I'm Mrs. Beat. Patricia's my name. I'm proud to say I'm this young town hero's wife. This man and his wife were walking down Briar Road in the opposite direction, and they witnessed the incident as it occurred. Oh, I know. What about the books the man dropped? I could tell you the names of every single one I could. So, you're saying that there were 4 books? Simply that at the scene of the crime, there were only 3 books, not 4. At the scene on Briar Road, a total of 4 books were most definitely found.
Objection!
And the photograph clearly shows the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, it belongs to the victim. I would ask the court to observe the back of the book in question. It's been burned to a crisp. The answer is that the book belongs to the couple who own the house where the defendant has his lodgings. Certain Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb. The man had his back up against the window, and he had burning books thrown at him. Are you suggesting that the book was thrown through a window and landed coincidentally at the scene of the crime?
Objection!
The defense asked to exercise its right to a summation examination. Again. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I am the Story-Driven Gamer, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to jump back into the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. So in the last episode, or 2 episodes, that is, we started the trial for case 4, and I know I said this in the last video at the end, but I really do think this is probably one of my favorite cases so far, probably my favorite case so far. And I know it's a bit premature to say that. I can't really say that fully until I've beaten the trial, because, you know, the ending could absolutely suck, and then that might bring it down, but so far I'm loving it, is the point I'm trying to make. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I've been thinking about it a lot since my last recording. I've just been wanting to jump back in. So in the last episode, we tried to prove which route Natsume took, because there was a bookstore, Bourbon Books I believe it was called, that was nearby, but we discovered that it was not Bourbon Books he went to, but Your Books, which is a little bit farther. If he took the fastest way home, he would have passed the victim. But if he went the long way around, he wouldn't have passed the victim. So we're trying to prove or figure out which path he took. We had to do a jury examination thing, the summation. That was fun. And yeah, we turned the jury back in our favor, because they unanimously voted against us, or for Natsume to be guilty. But we turned things around. Some other things that happened: we got a picture showing the crime scene, and that Natsume's books were littered around. And she was actually holding one, which was, what was it called? It was The Lion's Pride, which is the book that Mr. Garadeb was talking about that he had lost, his favorite book. And somehow she had it, and we kind of concluded that she might have it because it was chucked out the window and fell at her feet. I'm wondering if that's true, though. So in the last episode, I deduced, I mean, it could be wrong, but, I came out with a theory because of how similar the maid's build is and this lady's build is. What's her name? Olive Green. I was wondering if maybe the dead... She's not dead. I keep doing that. The victim is actually Garadeb's wife. And maybe there was a switcheroo. Like maybe Olive Green... Maybe the maid is Olive Green. And the main reason that came to mind was because of her having that book. I'm like, how'd she get that in her possession? And I thought maybe she was in Mr. Garadeb's room, and then it clicked. But there were a couple other things I noticed, after recording that I'm like, oh, that gives my theory a bit more of a hold. We talked, I think it was Gregson who brought up that, they didn't know Olive Green's identity other than, because her belongings were scattered around. They didn't actually talk to the victim herself because she was stabbed, and then she went into like a comatose state. They weren't able to actually talk to her yet. So I'm wondering if maybe that was planted there. And then obviously in the last video I had talked about how we never actually saw the bride's face because it was smashed. Oh yeah, and then there was another thing. When we were interrogating, I didn't even get to that yet in my summary. But we talked to the two witnesses, the couple. And they had mentioned that they saw a plump woman and a kind of a scrawny looking guy together. And so, that made it seem like, oh, maybe the victim and Natsume. But it could have been either the victim and Garadeb, or maybe the maid and Garadeb were out. Which got me thinking, like, maybe Garadeb and the maid planted planned this whole story about the fire just to give them an alibi, and really they were out and about during that time? I don't know. I have a lot of questions, a lot of theories surrounding that, but I think I might be onto something. But if you've been watching my series so far, my track record is not great for guessing things or theorizing. So we'll see. What else? I mean, I talked about the witnesses. I know we're about to go into another jury summation thing, so we'll get to do one of those again. And yeah, that about sums it up. I don't want to talk too long, so let's jump right back into it. There they are. I think her name is Rolly Beat, and her name is something Beat. Patricia? I don't remember. I consider the defense counsel's request for a further summation examination of the jury. And I've determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. Yes. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman? We are, my lord. Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime. Let's do it. Let's jump right into it. Judicial Findings. So the last one I jumped the gun. That was the only thing I got wrong. I messed up on one of these, so hopefully I'll be more patient this time. The juror's contention. The accused left behind evidence at the... Oh, I should read this. In his voice. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his? If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window is closed, can it? Dearie me, it was only a little book. Hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit. Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home the page tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble. Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes. Okay. Interesting dialogue there. Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems. Kinda. With one notable exception, of course. My learned student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover... Bam! No one else was even at the scene to commit the crime. Yeah, there's that. Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way. That means, I'm afraid, that during the summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those 2 details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. Okay, a name and a method. And there I was thinking this might be hard. But Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it. Otherwise this really will be where the trial ends. No pressure then. That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, counsel? Oh, yes, my lord. Alright, Rinosuke, focus your mind now. Empty your mind. Double slap. Clearly, the key to the summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid. Or should I say, Mrs. Garadev. Or should I say, Olive Green. Now I'm getting ahead of myself. We have a book that disappeared from the Garadev's house on the evening of the incident. That we do. And the 4th book found in the victim's hand. There must be a way to link the 2. Yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far, whatever it takes. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Garadev and how she reacts, even to the other things other people say. Okay, so you know what? There we go. I bet I gotta press her then. Or press other people. And see how she reacts. The defense's rebuttal. Okay, she's asking a question here, like, if there's some, novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. So maybe we have to find another alternative there. I'm gonna press this.
Hold it!
But what about the possibility that the window was open? What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been. How can you be so sure? The prosecutor fellow over there said it earlier, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. I don't want to invite the sort of cold indoors. So no, the window wasn't open. Us Londoners like sitting at the fire and staying warm, see? But you couldn't categorically state that the window wasn't open, could you? It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it. Then what's the point of even having windows, huh? Tell me! Counsel, you will kindly refrain from childish bickering. Sorry, I got caught up in the moment. Oh, sorry. Might be judgy. Somehow I need to show there's an undeniable possibility that the window was open. Because this young man isn't going to budge otherwise. Okay. I guess I might as well press you anyway. But the little book was on fire at the time, was it not? With flames of love, I'll have you know. There's really no such thing as a loving incendiary bomb. Well, he brought it upon himself. It's playing with fire to betray a fiery love. Isn't it? Well, don't you agree? Oh, well, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. I agree with you there. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding, Mrs. Garrideb. Never you mind that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute, nothing more. And I won't have any more of these suggestions that it wasn't anything whatsoever to do with this crime. Well then, good talk. Right, well, we'll see about that. What about juror number 5? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Mrs. Garrideb's relentless onslaughts. It's almost as though he's used to it. What a gentle soul he is. Okay, I guess we'll question him. Okay. He keeps talking about how he wants to get out of here. He wants to be done with this. He said that last time too. You just want to get this over with? How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here. Well, her and me both like her then, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some readies with me tonight, I don't know what that means, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know. She can be fierce, believe you me. Another shining example of marital bliss, then. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, Tell me? Do you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember. Sorry? It was too frightening, that's the thing. I must have blocked it out. Helpful. I wonder if Mr. Beat will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf. Don't even go there, Miss Susato. But probably, yes. There must be some way to jog his memory about this. There's a lot going on. I want to go back to your thing. So, you might be willing to change your decision, you mean? Oh my, such delight in your face, but I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I'm a very modern, metropolitan, rational woman. That's great. If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place? You see, modern, metropolitan, and rational thinking, wouldn't you say? And not at all extreme. As I see it, an overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese man has been implicated by overwhelmingly strong testimony. So despite one or two minor puzzlements, I do declare that the man is overwhelmingly guilty. Tee-hee! Modern, metropolitan, and rational logic, wouldn't you say? Overwhelmingly. But us modern gals are always delighted to embrace new fads, you know? So I'd be only too happy to consider an exciting new theory if you would come up with one. I'd be happy to do that too. If only I could. Let's do our very best not to disappoint the modern and metropolitan young lady. Right. I'm glad you omitted rational there. Nothing about these jurors is rational. It's all emotion. Okay, let's talk about the books. Hold it! But as we now know, there were 4 books, not 3. Well, what difference does it make? There's every possibility that the 4th book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord. Yes, that's the part I have a problem with. Sorry? Well, at the point the woman was stabbed, this landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Enjoying a fiery scrap with his wife or something, you said? That's not exactly how he put it, no. Well, anyway, the point is, the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened. I think that's what you call a strong alibi. Yeah. So it could have been the landlord who did it? Which only leaves the Nipponese fellow. Honestly, I can't see what all this palaver is about. It's a done deal, isn't it? I suppose it is, since I have nothing witty left to say. I ran out of jokes. I think the only person we haven't pressed yet is the last witness. Hold it! Does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case? Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, lad. Does that have... Could you tell us more about that fire? It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. It had 75 candles on the top, it did. What a sight to behold it was. You put candles on a cake? What? Was it some kind of devil? Was it some kind of devil worship? Are you Satan? May the power of Christ compel you. What is this witchcraft? Of course not, it was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, obviously. It seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruhodo. Okay, so I guess they don't do that in Japan. Anyway, I must have worn my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out, but candles went flying all over the room. The furniture caught and everything went up. The whole place filled with smoke. Definitely sounds like devil worship to me, but I'll let it slide. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold? But how do you catch a cold from a fire? That's a good question. What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, bless them, threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it. Ah, the windows. The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave, it did. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in a hurry. I knew it was devil worship all along, you can't fool me. But something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsume, could have attacked the young woman on the street. As well as how he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Again, yes. I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions, just a connection might do the trick. Alright, I'll see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike. That's the spirit! You got this! I don't know, do I? I was hoping this guy's thing changed. Oh, I think it did. Winter house fires are dire, you have to open the windows to clear the smoke. That's when the chill gets you, see? So if I have to do that... And... Okay. It's gotta be these two, right?
Objection!
There we go. That's how the windows open. These two juror statements clearly contradict one another. They do? How exactly, counsel? Don't point at me again! I told you it wasn't me! Huh? What's that you say? Speak up, lad, speak up. Juror number 3. Do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he is also Satan. He once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from a fire, then you'd be meant not to open the... Egads! I understand. Oh. Flippity gibbet. Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garadev household. And Mr. Garadev had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke.
Oh my.
Oh. What do you have to say, madam?
Excuse me.
Pardon me, madam. Juror number 4, do you have something else to say about that? That's a lot of tea. I just like tea. Mrs. Garadev! Oh, dearie me! What is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am? It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now. What is it? When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window? What? I beg your pardon? What are you insinuating? The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window. Oh dear, I'm screwed. What does that mean, though? And what if we did? Are they insinuating that they could have killed her from the window? Oh, alright then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window. Which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering. Even though your house was on fire? Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise. Of course. I should have realized, you angry little gremlin, you. That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have that added to Mrs. Garadev's formal testimony. I don't know, do we have to now pit the gentleman and her against each other? I'm gonna press her on this. The fourth book found that the scene of the crime shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garrett had told us he had been reading. Well, I really couldn't say. Sip, sip. On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading? I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I held it straight at him. And now you came to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right. Gotcha. Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset? Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I don't remember. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on as well, you know? I really don't. I barely noticed I was throwing a book, much less the little title of it. Aha, okay. What do you remember now?
Excuse me.
This is getting bonkers. We're just pursuing reactions left and right. What is it? What is it, juror number 5? I pity the fool. You know something? I remember what it was. That memory I blocked out. Okay, let's hear it. Ah. It was listening to what this granny was saying, brought all flooding back. Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? I am Mrs. Garrett with a maid, I'll have you know. One of them. Man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time. My wife beat the crap out of me. It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, like. I put my hand in my pocket for the wages I just earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out. Okay. Oh dear, what a disaster. You haven't heard the half of it, boy. Oh? The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight. I've lost the day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear. Stuck in the wall next to me it did, about an inch deep. No words, just terror. So is he implying that... I mean, he's just telling his own little anecdote, his own little story, but... He said that, like, she chucked the knife. So is he implying that somebody could have chucked the knife from a distance at I mean, I guess that's true. So maybe they're implying that, yeah, somebody chucked the knife from a distance. I could smell it then, you know? The god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in the muddy banks that night. I can tell you. But you said you live to fight another day. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it? I'll never use the word lightly again. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it. Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined. Just look at me. I'm adorable. Even though you can flip me like 50 times. No, I wasn't thinking that. Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized. At least attack with honor. Using a bow or the like. Or using a Suzuto takedown and throwing them over your shoulder like. What? Attack? Who are you going to attack? Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think. Alright? We'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later, if I dare. Okay, I think I already know what to do with this. I'm gonna try it.
Objection!
There we go. Those two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection. Good grief. You mean they don't contradict each other? Explain counsel at once. Juror number 2. Do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative? Oh my, whatever do you mean? An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back. What are you talking about? We demonstrated that the 4th book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garadev's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Garadev household to the street below. Yep. Here, what's that now? After all, Mrs. Garadev could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4? What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole? I'm beginning to think that, ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happened. Now you listen here, you Eastern wait, what? You Eastern Gala? As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. You gave us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house. But what? What was it? I'm really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. Are we talking about the knife? But I'm certain that at the very least, this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Garadev household to the scene of the crime was... I'm just taking a quick look. I think they're insinuating the knife itself. Yeah, I think we're just talking about the knife, probably. I hope.
Take that!
Is that it? Okay, the music's stopping. That's a good sign. Juror number 4, Mrs. Garadev. What? What now? I must apologize in advance for this. But I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before? Oh! Good Lord, Counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's back, man. Have some class. Oh, look at me. It's not often you get to see my back, on the victim stand. I mean the witness stand. My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Garadev were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Garadev was hurling anything she could at her husband, who'd been backed up against the window, including a knife. She tried to straight up murder him. A window that had been opened to clear that smoke and threw it to book sale to land at the crime scene. You can't seriously believe that the book was found in the victim's grasp. Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand? That would be a bit much.
Huh. Even my missus hasn't got a name like that.
Yes, I admit. There are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now. Oh my!
Huh?
Mrs. Garrett, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? Oh, crap. Okay, that's a yes. Oh, chatter. Who's that? Is that a prosecutor? My lord? I wish to change my decision. I'm a woman of my word, after all. Thank you, madam.
Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions.
Mr. Foreman. How about it, buddy?
I'd have to agree. Not that I think that Granny didn't mind.
Yes. You know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either.
All together now, ladies and gents.
Yay, there's our 4 right there. Mrs. Garrett is unconscious. And the old man is, I don't know, daydreaming. What about you, old man?
I'm busy worshipping Satan.
I didn't read what that was because my controller hit the table. And history. We did it. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo.
So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. Again. 2 jurors called guilty against 4 now calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided. And this trial will continue.
Yay! We are awesome. I bet Van Zykes is not happy. Okay, cool beans.
Now then, Lord Van Zykes, how does the prosecution wish to proceed?
Are you kidding me right now? I call bullshit on this whole thing. This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Yep. He's like, is this a joke to you? Like a corked wine, and the first few sips are bitter enough. You mean grape juice? Yes, that's what I meant. What follows is so repugnant it's good for nothing save the gutter.
If I may, Lord Van Zykes, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened.
Credible? Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? Are you an idiot? The defense's argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond, but let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those places being discussed. What do you mean by that? What's his angle this time? It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Garrett household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. That's correct. Which means that the distance from the Garrett's house to the scene is some, 15 yards. Let me see. 15 yards. That's around 14 meters. 14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I'd imagined. And as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, wantonly hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the clasped victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? Yeah, it's a little ridiculous when you put it like that. One of my theories, though, is I wonder if she was in the Garrett's house Which would make sense if she's really Mrs. Garrett. But, you know, she was in the house, you know, at the time of the fire or something. And did the jackknife follow a near-identical trajectory planned into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think. Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots. Ah, dang it. There's nothing I can say to that. That prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice. Masuzato. Serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Take that back! Maybe let's pick our battles here. Not important right now, Susato. My lord, might I be allowed to speak? As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense. Yes, go ahead. The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy. For what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leanings. And as such, the court has the duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. I agree, for what it's worth. To that end, juror number 4, Mrs. Joanne Garrett must be called to testify and submit to cross-examination. Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror? You must be crazy! Oh, I forgot about these two. Where have they been? We've just been chilling on the sidelines, sir. Order! 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 Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
Objection!
Fling! And unnecessary. Lord Van Zykes? Egads! There were already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both in a burning book and a jackknife must have been flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And you must assume they would be able to testify accordingly. Well, I mean, a tiny little knife and like a book in the fog, that could be easily missed.
What say you, witnesses?
I wasn't listening. What'd you say? Yes, sir. Constable Rowley Beat reporting for duty, sir. Oh, here we go. I like his little theme. Well, good morning, officer. Hope you had a good nap. Sorry for dozing until now, sir. I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir. Oh, they are so heroic, these London bobbies. Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more. Oh, Rowley, my hero, you make me swoon.
Very well. I hereby reject the defense's request. Suck it, Ryunosuke.
Oh, pooh.
And order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation of events.
Yes, sir. Okay, time for another witness testimony. Constable Beats report. This case had nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garrett, believe me. A London Bobby is good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Garrett house are top-hinged casements. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty Rowley was there to make sure nothing was disturbed. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir. Haha. I have to ask him about that top hinge casement. Yeah, is that the thing where like the window kind of swings open like from the bottom upward? Well, let's see. They're probably gonna explain it.
Well, this is quite startling. Top hinged casement windows. That detail is not in the police report, Constable.
Oh yes. Sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy. Might be. You can excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable. No, sir! Won't happen again, sir! You scare me, sir. I'm sorry, but... What exactly is the top-hinged casement window? And you... Are you an idiot? You cannot excuse your ignorance with such trite remarks, my learned friend. He's asking for the audience, for me. Who... I think I know what it means, but I'm not positive. I found it, Mr. Naruhodo. Even that's in this stupid little book. Cast your mind back to the windows in Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's room. Alright, I'll try. So the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the house. Yep, that's what I thought. But as it's a top-hinged casement window, it swings open along the upper edge, you see? I'm glad you rectified your ignorance. A casement window's most prominent feature is its stay. A metal bar which provides the window from being opened beyond a certain amount. Okay, so... if that's the case, nothing can probably really be thrown out of it. Well, that's unfortunate. It prevents it opening. This is all news to me. Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife would have been thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the pane and fallen straight down to the pavement below. No. See the problem then? Good, your education in windows is complete. Oh no, is there any chance that the body could have been moved? Like I already talked about how some things could have been staged, like the stuff pertaining to Olive Green. Like, could they have maybe moved the body? Maybe it was happening right under the window. Maybe Garadeb was like out there with the victim, and maybe the maid or Mrs. Garadeb, whatever she is, dropped like the knife and was dropping stuff to him from the window straight down, and then he killed her, and then he just moved the body. I don't know. Or it could be the other way around. Maybe the maid was out there and Mr. Garadeb was throwing... I don't know. We'll see. There was never any possibility of either the book or knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered. Something we've discounted already. That can't be! Did you see that, Rolly? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony. Oh yes, my darling, I saw it. I saw how he crumbled before me. I'm so intimidating. Oh, Rolly, you're so strong. I'm gonna be sick. How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and already my argument's been destroyed. Not yet, it hasn't. Counsel, if you could drag yourself upright again. The court awaits your cross-examination. Sit the hell up. My lord. Oh good, another desperate situation. We love those. You know what, Renosuke? Maybe you thrive under those situations. Constable Beach report. Okay. So nothing really stood out to me initially, like, oh, I can present something there. Hold it! Would you have seen it though? But according to my notes here, the sun had gone down already and it was dark. Over Rolly and I were strolling along gazing at the night sky and looking for a lucky star. Sorry? The star that will guide us to eternal happiness. So, what? Can a guide you to answer the question, please? If a flaming book had cut across the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star. I guess that's true. And if I'd seen a shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. Let Rolly be an inspector, I would have said. 3 times at least. Of course, but with the smog and everything, we couldn't actually see any stars. In short, are you trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky before you? Yes, sir, that is correct, sir. As sure as the night sky in London is starless, sir. It certainly seems like they're telling the truth. And then we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, so we ran straight over to help her. Okay. Hold it! Hold it! Yes, you said that you went to a nearby police box to fetch another officer. Is that right?
That's right, yes. If it had been on Rowley's beat, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course.
Don't feel bad, my love. You can't be expected to know the location of every police box on every beat.
So Rowley told me the way, only I sort of got a little lost on the way.
Patricia, my darling, that's why I love you. Your terrible sense of direction is bewitching to me. Oh, Pat.
Oh, Rowley.
Get a room, guys. Oh, please.
So, I suppose I was gone for about 15 minutes. But like I said, my Rowley was at the scene the whole time, making sure nothing was disturbed.
I was off duty at the time, of course, but a true Bobby is never really off duty, sir. Okay, let's see what he has to say about this.
Hold it!
Nothing to report. That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time, never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. I can swear to that on the yard's honor, sir. Really? That seems a little strange. Beg your pardon, sir? Strange, sir? Seems altogether regular to me. This burnt copy of the Lion's Pride was originally in the Garadev household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as you were at the scene of the crime the entire time? Not really, no. Aha! Could it be a different copy, sir? One that just happened to be burnt as well? I don't think so. Even if that were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book like that in her hand? As we can see from this photographic print, she had a bag over her shoulder. True. Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hand from the moment we arrived at the scene. Is that so? There's something about this statement that's not sitting right with me. The two mysteries of how that knife ended up in her back and how that book ended up in her hand. There must be some common thread between them. Interesting. I'm so sorry, Mr. Naruhodo. I had no right to speak out. What? What do you mean? I requested the cross-examination of Mrs. Garadev without consulting you. Even if the judge did deny me... Oh, I see. Well, I agree with you. We do need testimony from Mrs. Garadev. If we're ever going to get to the truth of this matter.
Do you really think so?
Well, think about it. No matter how far it is across the road or how that window opens. Mr. Garadev's book found its way to the scene of the crime somehow, didn't it?
You're right.
And then there was Mrs. Garadev's reaction to me showing her the knife. The woman's hiding something, I'm sure of it.
You're right again.
You're so smart. We need to use this cross-examination to uncover more clues. We'll get to the bottom of this one way or another, I swear.
Yes.
Hold it!
Talk about the windows. By which you mean they don't fully open, is that correct? Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, you see? So they're restricted as to how much they open. And therefore, anything thrown out of the window from inside the room would simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. Here is the location where objects would have fallen. Yes. Directly opposite the scene of the crime on the other side of the rather wide road. Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top hinge casement thing before? Come on, guys. Well, I have another question for you, Constable. And what would that be, sir? How do you even know? Why would you have any idea what sort of windows Mr. and Mrs. Garadev's house is furnished with? Ah, well, sir, that's very simple. You see, I helped with the investigation yesterday. Oh. Care to explain?
Excuse me.
What that was about? That reaction was almost like, oh, I'm so in love. Do you have something to add, Mrs. Beat?
Sorry.
You look, well, delighted. Is there some particular reason for that?
Oh, I was just remembering, that's all. Don't mind me. We really were so lucky.
Lucky? What do you mean?
Well, of course I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't misunderstand me. Please. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Rowley's beat. It was so close, you see.
Oh, I hadn't realized.
Oh yes, that street by a road. That's the boundary between Rowley's beat and the next one. Isn't that right, my love?
Sorry, what? Constable Beat.
Huh? Oh, yes, that's right. That's the reason I was helping out interviewing the occupants of the Garrett household yesterday. Their house is on my beat, you see, sir?
Huh, that really was cutting it close then.
Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something. If the Garrett household is on your beat, does that mean that the pavement next to it is as well?
Outside Mr. Garrett's house? Yes, ma'am. The pavement on that side of the road is part of my beat. So I wonder if that would have had anything to do with it. Like maybe she was killed on his side and then was moved over to the other side. Who would benefit from doing that though? Unless it was, except these two. I don't know. I see. I was unaware of that.
Just think, if the woman had been attacked just on the other side of Briar Road, we would never have been able to go for that meal to celebrate her wedding anniversary. But that's the life of a Bobby after all.
Extraordinary people are Bobbies, tirelessly working for the benefit of all Londoners.
Do you know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Rowley for all his hard work. Sure, let's go with that. Don't you think so, my darling?
That must be it, Pat, my love. That must be it. I think perhaps we should make sure we have that information officially on record.
Leave it to me, Mr. Naruhodo. I'll take care of it immediately.
Okay. The pavement where the victim was found lies just outside Constable Beat's beat, the border of which runs down the middle of Briar Road. I'm thinking it seems likely she might have been killed on the other side then and carried over to the opposite side. I'm not sure why.
And now it's my turn, I think.
Let's just press this first point.
Hold it!
How can you say that for certain? A very good question, sir. And the answer is this. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to all us policemen of our sworn duty.
He showed us that before, didn't he?
Did he? Can't say I remember, I do. He said the same thing, too. To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man, it's what the job's all about. And that is why I can stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you a Bobby is good for his word. Well, rubbing my tired eyes, admittedly. Sir?
Oh, Rowley, you're so manly.
Of course I am, my darling Patricia.
Oh, Pat. Oh, Rowley.
Are we ever gonna get tired of doing this? No, none of this is what I meant. Are we gonna have to separate you two, social distancing and all that, 6 feet apart? I meant, how can you say for certain that this case had nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garrett? Ah, I see, sir. You should have said so earlier, sir. Yes, well, so could you answer the question? That was a waste of time then. Absolutely, sir. I will answer it to the fullest of my ability, sir. There's a surprising reason why Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's domestic dispute can't be related to this case. Before I get into that, sir, just one thing. Oh, music's gone down. Yes? I'd very much like you and all your countrymen to understand the great British institution of Scotland Yard. So I hope you'll take back some tales of us London Bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles. I wasn't planning on going back just yet. I've only just arrived here. So to that end, sir, I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your perusal. But I must warn you, you won't be able to get through it without shedding a few tears. Thank you. I'll try. Yay, new evidence. A small folding wallet that identifies London bobbies and contains the rules of conduct to which they must adhere. Oh.
Can I ask you something? Please, Mr. Lawyer, sir?
Before we talk to you about anything. Yes, we're going to look at this. There's 2 pages. Principles of policing. Item 1. A policeman will strive to preserve the peace within his allotted beat. Okay, so obviously if it happened in a different beat, across the street, then not his problem. I mean, he did do something at least. Okay, item number 2. A patrolling officer is expected to walk 20 miles around his beat every day for the furtherance of community relations. Okay, 20 miles around his beat every day. Okay. Now, that was principles of policing. Metropolitan police regulations. Item number 1. Any crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the beat in which they are discovered. Yeah, see, so that's what I mean. It was technically discovered outside of Rowley's beat, but there's got to be a reason for that. Like, why that's significant. That's going to be significant. Which is why I think maybe the body was moved from his beat. Item number 2. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. So whose beat is it then? Do we know? Was it Gregson? I mean, he's not like a beat cop, though. I don't know. He's a detective. Oh, yes, of course. What is it?
You're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell.
Oh, I wonder if she's going to do the same thing she did last episode, or whenever it was. Yeah, last episode when she's like, she's getting all upset with me, and then she says something, to change the testimony, and then we catch her on it. What? I wasn't really, what's she doing?
Please, just because I'm a woman, it doesn't make doesn't make my testimony any less valuable. You might just see me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word, I am.
I really don't remember suggesting that I doubted you.
You liar! No excuses, I don't want to hear it. Die! My voice will be heard. My lord, you let me speak, won't you?
Yes, Mrs. Beat. I will allow you to supplement your testimony if you desire. Just stop choking your husband. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the sage one. That was a very loud mutter.
I heard that. That Japanese man thinks the policeman's wife's word counts for nothing, does he? Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Rowley won't.
Duly noted, Mrs. Beat. Please, I humbly ask you to continue.
What could she possibly be about to say, I wonder?
I know what I saw. My eyes never let me down. My sense of direction is a little off sometimes, though.
Hold it!
Let's press her on that. Mrs. Beat, nobody is questioning what you've told us.
I saw it, I did. That evening I saw it clearly. The little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back, slinking away from the scene. Ah. And I know what I didn't see as well. I didn't see any flaming books or knives flying through the sky.
All very clear. You also mentioned something about having a poor sense of direction?
Oh yes, well, that's a little embarrassing, really. I'm always ending up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Rowley.
Up. You got something to say, Mr. Beat?
Excuse me.
Constable Beat, is there a problem? No. Nah, of course not. I'm just tired. No, sir. No problem, sir. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps? Oh, well, in a way, sir. Yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened that evening is all. Say, what? What evening? You mean Mrs. Beat lost her way on the night of the incident? Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box in the next beat over for mine. But she was gone a fair bit longer than what I was expecting. I thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, but my darling was gone a good 15. Oh, Rolly is such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly. The bouquet? Sorry, what bouquet are you talking about? Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Rolly's so romantic. He saved up for it with my farthings and her pennies he found in the gutter while doing his rounds. Yes, how romantic. I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling? Ah! Huh? Ah. Oh, yes. But that was just between us. No, talking about anyone else, darling. You have to promise... Really? Oh. What was that all about? Constable Beat looked very obviously troubled during that exchange. I'm afraid I can't offer any useful insight, Mr. Naruhodo. But I'm quite sure of one thing. We have to ask Mrs. Beat about the bouquet. Mrs. Beat, this bouquet you just mentioned. Or bouquet. I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony, please. Oh, really? Yes, I'd love to. What is going on here? Okay. What happened was I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while. Okay, let's press her on that.
Hold it!
You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime? Yes, that's right. Oh, I was so upset. When we ran over and saw it was a woman with a knife in her back, I was so shocked I dropped the bouquet Rolly gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice at first. And then you went to the police box to report it to the policeman whose beat it was on? Yes, and I came back to the scene together with the other constable, you see? That's when I spotted my bouquet again. But the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, it was nowhere near the victim's body at all. In case you need reminding, Mrs. Beat, the victim is not deceased. There we go. So I think what she's implying is she dropped the bouquet near the body, and then when she came back, they were not near the body. So either the bouquet was moved or the body was moved, and I'll wager the body was moved. I was all flustered for a moment before I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road. Your husband, presumably? That's right. Silly me, I'd gone over to the wrong side of the street. Although I'm going to blame the bouquet this time. I can't think how it got there, really, I can't. So the bouquet somehow moved from one side of Briar Road to the opposite. Curious indeed. Isn't it? But the worst of it is I forgot to pick the bouquet up again when we left the scene. That beautiful rose Rolly bought me. With that change from the gutter he spent so long collecting. By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry solitary rose? Oh, yes, that's it. My hero. That's the bouquet Rolly bought me for our anniversary, with odd bits of change he found in the gutter. Maybe just call it a rose. A rose by any other name. Tell us, Lord Van Sykes, where did you come by the flower? According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene investigation, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Garadev household. In front of the Garadev's house? Although it wasn't noticed until the morning as it lay where the street lamp cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare. Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Could I have it back now, please? It's evidence. No, I think for good measure, this rose should be added to the court record as evidence. Oh. Okay, a present for Patricia Beat from her husband Rolly. The shock of seeing the stabbed victim caused Mrs. Beat to drop the rose where she stood. I wonder if there's a chance we'll examine it and there'll be like blood on it or something. But it's a symbol of our love! How dare you!
I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back. Good grief. Rest assured that I shall do my very best not to forget, Mrs. Beat. If you do, I'll come after you and kill you.
I want to examine the bouquet.
An English rose. It's such a beautiful flower.
This is a rose, is it? I've never seen one before.
Do you not take interest in flowers, Mr. Naruhodo?
I wouldn't say that exactly, but I do know 3 types at least.
Gosh, 3, that it?
Yes, plum blossom, peach blossom, and cherry blossom.
Perhaps you should consider branching out. Learning some that aren't fruit tree based, for example.
Okay, good talk. What about this wrapping here? It's very stylish paper the flower's wrapped in, isn't it?
It's just an old newspaper, Mr. Naruhodo.
Oh, I suppose it's because I'm not used to seeing English print. It looks so exotic to me.
I see.
Is something wrong?
Oh, no. I was just thinking that if you wrapped a stone-baked sweet potato in English newspaper, it might look like some sort of fancy cake.
Suzuto, you do love your cakes. Me too. I can't blame her. Maybe we have to present the rose here. Because it says, my trusty Rolly was there to make sure nothing was disturbed. But if we're going off the premise that, again, I think the body might have been moved, but if we're going off the premise that the rose was moved, then obviously it was disturbed. I'm gonna go with this. I hope I'm right. Fingers crossed.
Objection!
Dang it, no! Let's just consider the implication of that statement for a moment, shall we? What implications, counsel? Nothing strikes me about it. Exactly, there's nothing striking about it. Okay, know what I can do now, though? I just want to look at the new characters we have. I forget if I read this. The victim of this case, who was found with a knife in her back, luckily the wound didn't prove fatal, but the woman remains unconscious in her hospital bed. Rolly Beat, 23. He's a young guy, a devoted London bobby who witnessed the incident whilst walking down the street with his wife of a year, Patricia. And there's Patricia herself, 21. The wife of Constable Rolly Beat, who is a witness to the incident. She's relatively recently married and fiercely proud of her policeman husband. I need to clear my head and come at this again from a different angle. Okay, I gotta figure out what I gotta do here. Well, Mr. Naruhodo, what do you make of all this? Yes, the whole idea of an invisible attacker has been troubling me all along. But I believe I'm starting to get a picture of what really happened here now. The 4th book that had no business being at the scene of the crime made me sure that Mr. Garrett was hiding something from us. But it's becoming increasingly clear that someone else has been hiding something from us as well. I think I may already be armed with everything I need to strike a decisive blow here. This time, it's going to expose the whole truth about this mysterious affair. So I think I had the right idea. I might have just pressed the wrong thing. I think it might be this, and then the rose. I think.
Objection!
There we go. Okay, so I don't feel completely like an idiot. Like, I think the one that I presented it to could have worked as well. That's sometimes one of the issues with these games. Sometimes it's hard to follow the exact logic, like, you know, the exact thing they want you to refute sometimes, but we got it in the end. You claim, Constable B, that there was nothing to report in the 15 or so minutes you were guarding the scene, but that cannot be. What was that?
What? What do you mean to say?
In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the policeman assigned to the beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
That's correct. Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road to where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, if a single sorry bloom can be so described, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs. Harsh words.
Meager!
Objection!
Yeah, she's like,
you a-hole!
but if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to that fact? Oh, shoot. No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It had nothing to do with the case. That's why Rowley didn't mention it, I'm sure. No, because sadly it's not only a bouquet we're talking about here. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way around. What are you talking about? Think about it. Besides Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Garadev's book. Mr. Garadev's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out of the window by his wife. It would have had to land right there, but it struck the pane of the casement window and landed here on the west side of the street. And yet, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime on the east side of the street. But in fact, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in front of Mr. and Mrs. Garadev's house. There's no logical explanation for those things. Unless somebody deliberately moved them. That's what I think. Well, like I said, I think the rose wasn't moved. I think everything else was. What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Rowley's done something wrong. Don't listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says. Wittering on about books and bouquets? Why should we cats? Nitpicking, that's what it is. Oh good, Mrs. Garadev's come round. Lucky us. We haven't heard from the jury in a while. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Garadev. But deliberately meddling with the scene of a crime is a criminal offense. It's called, tampering, Mr. Naruhodo. That's right. But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it. For a very subtle but compelling reason.
Objection!
Tampering? You've barely heard the term before. Tell us, my learned friend. Who would possibly have had cause to carry out such an elaborate deception? Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All the evidence and all the testimony points to that one particular person. Counsel, I must demand that you substantiate this conjecture. Okay, so let's think. Are we suggesting... Okay, I was thinking Mr. or Mrs. Garadev. But if we're implying that the thing did happen at the same time, like the, maybe we're implying Rowley? I mean, I definitely have some theories. Because Rowley is the one who saw everything go down, but he didn't mention anything. He was the one who supposedly saw this and said, like, nothing happened under his watch. Maybe when Patricia ran to, you know, for the 15 minutes or whatever, that's when he tampered with everything. That would make sense. So I'm gonna go with Rowley Beat, and hopefully I don't get it wrong.
Take that!
I think I got him. Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Rowley Beat, it was you! What? A policeman? A member of Scotland Yard? What nonsense! Why would my Rowley do something like that? You sicken me. There's no one straighter than my husband. My Bobby works more tirelessly for the people of London. Mrs. Beat, you said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty. The 15 minutes that you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it. You are making it up. It's all nonsense, it's all lies. What about that Japanese man with the whiskers? I bet it was him. He did it.
Objection!
If that was true, Constable Beat would have seen him do it. Oh, yeah, I suppose. And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, it was after the defendant had fled the scene. Well,
Objection!
maybe so. First, you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusations lack one very important thing. And what is that? You claim the crime scene was tampered with? But there's only one reason anyone would commit such a reckless crime: to hide something. That's right, he's right. But my husband and I just happened to be there, that's all. So why would he have had anything to hide? It doesn't make sense. You've offered no motive for this alleged tampering. And until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. Constable Beat had a very good reason for wanting to tamper with the scene of the crime. That's the key to this entire affair. Mr. Naruhodo, have you managed to solve this mystery? Counsel, you have made a very serious accusation against a London police officer. If you are mistaken, I'm sure I need not point out that your reputation as a lawyer will be irrevocably damaged. With that stark warning in mind, you will now explain to the court the motive for this alleged tampering. Yes, my lord? Deep breaths, Naruhodo. Constable Beat's motive for tampering with the scene was to hide, I think, where the victim fell. I think it's this. Where the victim fell to the ground. That is what this body had to cover up at all costs. What? Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked? What are you talking about? He told you at the very start, didn't he? Didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road. We saw it happen, remember? It was right here, as if anyone didn't know already know. That's certainly what everybody has been led to believe. But in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all. What? What? Oh boy, here we go. It's nice when you get things occasionally right. I'm not totally screwing this one up. I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end, counsel. If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my Nipponese friend. Where are you proposing that the crime actually took place that evening? It's right here under right on... I don't know exactly where, I guess just over here somewhere.
Take that!
But that's... on the opposite side of the road. I don't understand. On the evening in question, Mr. Garrett's book fell directly down from the open window above. And your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, never moved at all. What did move was the scene of the crime itself. Good gracious. Ooh, a crime scene switcheroo. Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. But these witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place. That's right. I saw it with my own eyes. It was 5 o'clock in the evening and already dark. There was the typical London fog on the ground. When you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid, that was actually on the west side of Briar Road. No, that's not true. It can't have been. Constable Beat then arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help. And during the 15 minutes you were away, he transplanted the crime scene itself. Or the crime scene. He moved all the things shown in this print, the victim herself, the 4 books. He moved everything, in fact, to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road. Extraordinary. But the constable overlooked one thing. What? What did he overlook? The bouquet, I presume? Exactly. The prosecution told the court just a few moments ago about the discovery of the rose bouquet. Lord Van Zyke said it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. Yes, it couldn't be seen in the dark, obviously. Which is why it was only the bouquet that was found in its original position on the pavement on the west side of Briar Road. Oh dear. Oh, this... okay. I'm still not 100% sure why, except unless it was... Again, I don't think we're implying that he killed him, he just tampered with the evidence. And I wonder if that was He didn't, like, did he not want to deal with it since it was on his side? Did he want to move it to the other district or whatever, the other beat? And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond? Constable Rowley beat. I want to see him freak out. Looks like he's about to. Hey there, sleepyhead. Well, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to nod off again, but I haven't slept properly in a month. Did I miss anything important? You can't hide from me. Oh, Rowley. It isn't true, is it? What that lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is, because you're the most upstanding righteous man I know. Yeah. I had a dream. A terrible dream. All the things I did that night. Everything come out. Everything exposed. Okay, you sleep talking. That makes this easy. Only, it seems... it wasn't a dream at all.
Good golly, Miss Dolly. Order, order, order! What on earth is the meaning of all this?
Oh, Rowley, why? Why would you do something like this? Moving a corpse is a criminal offense, isn't it? Wishing the victim dead shouldn't be one, too. Or should be one.
Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respected member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the good people of London Town.
I can't say, sir.
What?
I really am ever so sorry about all this. For damaging the Yard's reputation, for everything. There's gotta be a reason. I have a possible explanation for why, on that particular evening, Constable Beat felt compelled to move the scene of the crime. I can think of one reason.
What? How could you possibly know?
You, a foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman, you jest.
And yet, Lord Van Zykes, it is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth of the matter thus far, so shut your trap. Shutting up now, sir. I believe it would be beneficial to the court to hear this extraordinary young lawyer's theory.
Oh, extraordinary. Oh, you flatter me.
Counsel for the defense, if you please.
Yes, my lord.
Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence.
At once, my lord. England, Japan. It makes no difference where you come from. Human emotions are the same. And I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's actions. Okay, I think it has to do with this. It might ask me exactly which page it's on. Now let's see, which one of these would apply? Let me just see, what's the question again? What gives away the motive for Constable Beat's unthinkable actions? Patrolling officer expected to walk 20 miles around his beat. I don't think it has to do with that. Any crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the beat in which they are discovered. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Maybe that one. If I had to guess, it's that one. It's gotta have to do with this.
Take that!
I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I've only just arrived from Japan, which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learnt that, though honorable, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world, for example. That's true, we've heard that many times. Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat in all kinds of ways. There's no doubt that the young Bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day, certainly. Could it be that he's just lazy? I'm trying to think of something like some actual reason, but we see that he's kind of a bum. Like, I know that they say he's, like, respected. He might just be respected just for being a Bobby, but he's kind of lazy, always tired, so maybe he's just like, I don't want to deal with this crap, and move the body. But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Special? How?
On account of this bouquet, my lord.
Oh, yes. It was our very first wedding anniversary.
So they had plans. Yeah, he basically just didn't want to deal with it so he could spend the day with his wife. Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford this simple gift for his wife, and was so looking forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal, when he and Mrs. Beat stumbled upon a crime along Briar Road. When he saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapse on the pavement ahead of them. This is the picture I was talking about before, when I was saying, they described this as a plump woman and like a straggly guy. That could not be Natsumi. That could be like the maid and Garadeb. It could be the victim and Garadeb. Or it could be somebody else entirely. What must have gone through the man's mind? Is this Ryunosuke talking? But sir, just on that one particular day I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beat puts out with a lot being married to a Bobby like me. I want to show my dear wife how much I care. Aww, he really does love her. Even if she's manipulative and violent. This is the warrant card that Constable Beat offered to lend to me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with the initial investigation and help detectives. Aha! Constable Beat. Is that, or is that not the reason why he moved the whole scene of the crime that day? Yes. Everything you said, it's all right. So that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat. Oh. Exactly. Okay, so at least he didn't have devious intentions. It was for his wife. It's kind of sweet in a way. To summarize, the incident actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat. Good gracious! Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you have done? Kind of feel bad for him. It is the first time since I became a copper that I would ever curse God. Stay close to me, Pat. The criminal could still be lurking somewhere. As we ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. We've got to report this to the station as quickly as possible. But then it dawned on me. I realized where we were, where the victim was lying, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigation and help detectives. Why here? Why does this have to happen here? And why tonight of all nights? Yeah. Why? I do feel bad. It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime, so I told Pat she'd have to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. That's true, because she wouldn't know that was his beat, but he did. It was then, when I opened my mouth to speak, it just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the next beat to mine, Pat. So you'll have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Mearsham Street and then... I wonder if he maybe even gave her wrong directions. Maybe she wasn't lost. And that's when he did the deed. After she left. Aw, she's tears in her eyes. It's so romantic! Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Oh, look at that. Look at him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, Constable. I just wanted, just that one night, to take my Patricia out for dinner. Oh, Rolly. Just that one night.
You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening of celebration would be ruined. And so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction. Just across the street to the East Pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care. I mean, as much as I feel bad for him, like, a woman, well, she didn't die, but a woman was stabbed. It's kind of like, it's kind of a weakness. Like, it's sweet, but kind of weak on his part. Because I mean, we all know how like nice it is. Like, you want to celebrate celebrations on that special day, but they could have, you know, if they really wanted to, they could have, you know, whatchamacallit, you know, rescheduled and like done this another night. So I wouldn't say it's like he had no choice, or like, you know, I get why he did it. I mean, I do get why he did it, but at the end of the day, he just committed a crime just so that he could go out to dinner with his wife. But it's still sweet that he really cares, that he cares that much for her. Did I read this? Just across the street to the East Pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care. You see, I thought, well, I was sure the victim was dead, you see. I beg your pardon? Oh, of course he did. Otherwise my Rolly would never have left the poor woman on the freezing cold pavement. Ah, I see your meaning now. But God got me back from my sins, didn't he? That's why I missed the rose I bought for Pat. Oh no, Rolly. That was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in such a dark place. I'm so sorry, Rolly. And can you tell us, Constable? How many books did you move from the one side of the road to the other in total? Huh? Oh, 4 it was? Yes, sir. Definitely. 4. 3 of them brought by Mr. Natsume. And the 4th being the one that fell from the window upstairs in the Garrett household, of course. Okay, so this all happened... Well, obviously it all happened after the incident. That's a given. But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? Was it already there? When all the others were scattered haphazardly around, I mean. Oh, well, sir. That's because... That's how I found it. Yeah, that's what I figured. So I guess she was carrying it. How you found it? What do you mean? When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So, when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand. You're sure it was this book, The Lion's Cry, that the victim was holding? Oh, yes, sir. No doubt about it, sir. Interesting. Okay, so the fact that she was killed right in front of the Garrett's house, it seems like it could be that she was in the Garrett's house. Like, maybe she got the book directly from the Garrett's house and walked out of the house and was killed. A book entitled Lion Pride that was in the victim's hand when Mrs. Beat first ran over to see what had happened. I thought it was an open and shut case at the time, you see. There were only the 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw it happen. However, which way you looked at it, it had to be the fellow who ran off who'd done it, I thought. I couldn't see the harm, really. Anything moving all over the road would make a jot of difference. I suppose this is it for me now. I've had it. My lord. Yes, Lord Van Zykes. Go easy on him. Really? No. Sorry. I believe that concludes the cross-examination of the witnesses. Get him out of my sight. Say what? Constable, you may withdraw. Yes, sir. Mr. Prosecutor, sir. What will become of my Rolly? What will happen to him? Death. For now you are free to go home. The police will contact you in due course. Please, don't punish my husband. This was all my fault. It's because I'm always moaning at him for coming home late.
Leave it now, Pat. Let's go home. I'm tired. All right then, my love. One last thing, Constable. Sir? Let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem to you. Next time you move a crime scene, do it properly. Yes, sir. Carve that lesson in your mind. He is still a rookie. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of a crime, or I will kill you personally. Never again, sir? You mean to say... Oh, is he letting him off with a warning? Leave, now. This trial is not yet over. Sir! Oh, wow. So yeah, it seems like he actually showed mercy on them and was just like, get out of here. I'll give you some advice and never do it again. Okay, that's kind of sweet. That's kind of... Wouldn't expect that from this hard, stone cold guy. The way I see it, this could also maybe help strengthen their marriage. Which is good, I guess.
Well, quite a startling revelation, I must say. Whoever thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of a crime like that? Indeed, my lord. Nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here. Principally, that the accused, Mr. Suzuki Notsumi, is the only person who could possibly have committed this crime.
Objection.
No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else. Another person who could be responsible for the knife in the victim's back. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I believe the prosecution is probably well aware of this possibility already. Lord Van Zykes, is this true? Very well. Name the person, if you will, and if further investigation is warranted. The prosecution has no objection to the trial continuing. You will name this other person who could have perpetrated the crime. I mean, it could be the maid, but it could also be Mr. Garadev himself. I'm gonna go with Mr. Garadev.
Take that!
Excuse me? I'm afraid I was unable to hear you, counsel. Again, please, and louder this time. I dare say my learned friend timid tone is a reflection of the confidence he has in his answer. So that's all the sweat is about, is it? Ah, shoot. We've already managed to establish where the victim was actually collapsed. I'm sure that means... we must nearly be at the end of the line. Counsel, I say again. I mean, it could have been, right? Well, like, I feel like that could have been the answer. Okay, it must be it must be her then. I'm like doing another look just to make sure, but... it could have technically been either of them. They both live there. Here?
Take that!
Okay. The defense would once again like to request the cross-examination of a new witness, my lord. Once again? My assistant made the same request earlier. In order to finally reveal the truth about this case. It's imperative that we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joanne Garadev. Me? Me? Oh, dearie me.
Objection!
That request has already been denied.
Objection!
But the situation is very different now. Mrs. Garadev, answer me this. What do you want now, you little toad? At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Garadev. In the course of the argument, a minor house fire was ignited. And to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened a window that looks out over Briar Road. Well, what of it? You threw this book at your husband when he was cornered with his back against the window. Upon striking the pane of the open top-hinged casement window, the book plummeted directly down. Finding its way to what we now know to be the true scene of the incident. Yes, and as I said, what of it? During the argument, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. That be true. So let me ask you one more time, Mrs. Garrett. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back. Have you really never laid eyes on it before? Oh! I don't recall it. Seriously? That's a lie. Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw at my husband? And anyway, the man over there and all that regalia said members of the jury needn't testify, didn't he? Conveniently, yes.
Objection!
Is he gonna change his mind? No, I have no recollection of saying that at all. Juror number 4. Oh! Make no mistake. You jurors are not special in any way. You all suck. You are not immune to the judicial process. If you know something about this knife, madam, let the truth come out. But that's just a common or garden knife. It could have come from anywhere. We have several like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know? What's that? Are you joking? What are you saying, please, Mrs. Garrett? She basically just accidentally said they have a lot of those. Now you listen to me. I refuse to believe all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought that I'd injure someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it. Oh, the poor woman. No, she gets no sympathy from us. So yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence if you're going to insist on this being my fault. You are going to have to prove to me that I threw that knife if that's what you think. Come along now, chop chop. Do your worst. Well, Mr. Naruhodo? If I had evidence like that, believe me, I would have thrown it at her already. Right in the face. Then take the stand, juror. Oh! The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this woman. Thank you, Lord Van Zykes. I'm going to have to testify? Juror number 4. As I'm sure you will appreciate, having observed it with your own eyes today. Witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being unearthed. So have fun, truths of which the witnesses themselves may not have even been aware. Oh dearie me. So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony, Mrs. Garrett. And mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Do you concur, counsels? Certainly, my lord. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for, my lord. Okay, are we coming up on a to be continued, or are we going right into it? This seems like a good spot. This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. I am a lawyer, an ace attorney. I'm here in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer. I got this.